Our speakers today are Linda Ackerman Anderson and Joe Rafter. Thank you and welcome. This session is sponsored by the Life Cycle Institute, and let me just take a moment and read the sponsor message, if I may. The Life Cycle Institute has helped organizations create an enterprise change management approach, implement a change management office, and integrate change management activities into their project delivery process. They have decades of change management experience with over 40 certified change management professionals. ACMP would like to thank the Life Cycle Institute for sponsoring the enterprise-wide capabilities track. Please be sure to visit their table with Life Cycle Institute's materials for more information. I'm privileged to introduce today Linda Ackerman Anderson, who's the Vice President and co-founder of Being First, and Joe Rafter, Director of Enterprise Change with Pacific Gas and Electric. And I have an opening question for Linda and Joe, and that question is, why is this topic important to you?
There we go. All right. Enterprise change leadership is important to me for two reasons. One, I really like to push the edge of things. I really like to figure out what's possible, what's needed, and how to fill in that blank. And so two things. One, change leadership, and we'll talk about that in this session as an advancement to all of the approaches to change that we have, and also doing it at the enterprise level, which means engaging senior leadership all through the organization to achieve results. So for me, this is two topics really close to my heart, and being able to actually do it, not just think about it, write about it, publish about it, but do it. And so that's the gift of Joe and PG&E.
All right, thank you, Linda. So for me, I'm drawn to really complex situations. Sometimes I think there might be something a little loose up top, but I really like complex opportunities and creating structure out of chaos, both from a business process perspective, a strategy perspective, but also the opportunity that it presents to work with people and help them see a different, dare I say, a better way of stepping into really, really complex change. So it's a true pleasure to be here, and you're going to hear about what we like to call a delicious cocktail of transformational complexity. It's a bit intoxicating that we have at PG&E here over the next hour or so. So thanks.
Great. Thanks, Joe. So let's talk a little bit about our objectives today. We want to share with you the strategy we have used for creating change leadership enterprise capability and starting up a whole new function of enterprise change in an organization that never had it before. So really launching at a senior level the function of enterprise change. In addition, for us, it's really important to draw the distinction between change management and what most leaders or project leaders are asking for, and change leadership, which is a much bigger conversation. And so you'll hear a good deal about that today from us, at least from our point of view. We're going to share our framework and our process for enterprise change capability building. So it's getting the leaders to do this, getting project managers and project teams to do this differently. And so it's an interesting process. We are clearly in the middle of the journey, but we've made great leaps and bounds, and we'll share with you how we've done that. And lastly is really to drive home the importance of using one integrated strategy for change, one approach for change throughout an organization, because we're all dealing with, there's change management and project management and continuous improvement and Lean Six Sigma, and they're all happening all over the place. How do we kind of corral the cats and have a common framework, create a common framework for the best of change throughout the organization? So those are our objectives today. A lot to cover in an hour, and we want to do this somewhat interactively with you, but still be able to share our perspectives and our history. So first up is you checking in with yourself about what's true for you. So we're talking about what we're doing, pushing the edges at PG&E around enterprise change capability. And we very much want you to be thinking your own baseline. What's your reality right now? And compare it to what we're talking about. It may make you excited, enthralled with doing this. It may actually confront some of your own assumptions about how you're positioned in the organization. So all of that is important. First up, what's true for you, baseline? How does your organization define change management? We so frequently find, and again, Donna talked about this morning, we don't really have a common definition yet. We think we do. But when leaders say, I think I need change management, would you go get a change management person in here? I want to know, what are they think they're asking for? You know, what are they recognizing as the need? So how does your organization determine what change management needs? And our challenge of making this about change leadership, which we'll share with you. And so here is the same question, what's true for you? Where does change management fit in relation to project management, continuous improvement, Lean Six Sigma, any of the other approaches in the organization? Who gets called to the table when around a project? And for what? And is there competition? And are they all collaborating? And common methods, et cetera. So recognizing there needs to be an integration across is a critical piece for us. Here's a key one. Do senior leaders see the need for change leadership as an enterprise capability? I'm not talking about doing change management on every project, because then we've got it in the enterprise. I'm talking about senior leaders recognizing the need, and they as leaders and all their project leaders have to be able to walk the talk of leading change given the complexities at hand. So to what degree do they see the need for this? And then lastly, does your organization understand and value what change leadership is about? And you may not have the answer to that question yet. We'll fill in some of those blanks as we proceed. And are your leaders game to develop themselves, to actually participate in becoming a better change leader? How do you create that conversation in the organization? And then last question for you is, how about you? Are you stepping into advancing your practice and thinking at a broader scale? So those are our, lost one. Those are our kind of baseline questions for you. One of the things that we want to do as we proceed with this is, if you have questions all along, we're going to do our very best to save some time at the end, but we're also open to entertaining some questions as we go throughout, and we'll manage so that we get through what we have to share with you. And given the lights, if you'll raise your hand high if you have a question. All right? So just a couple of quick pieces, and then I'm going to hand it to Joe to tell the story of PG&E. So quick things for us. This is our perspective. So again, we may be stirring the pot, and that's okay. That's kind of what we do to push the edge here. So a definition of change management for us, it's a critical discipline that provides guidance, plans on communications and training, typically within the deployment window. We're ready to go. We've got the design. Now let's execute. We need change management here. How are we going to communicate this? How are we going to get people trained? That's classic, traditional, and frequently is how it's viewed in our estimation as we go around. The other thing is change management. My experience is that a lot of change management people consider themselves providing the analytics, doing the tools, coming up with data, coming up with the assessments on readiness, on degree of impact, et cetera, providing analytics to project teams about whether or not people are in game to take on change. And so that's a critical piece as well. Now, in contrast, change leadership is setting up projects from day one, from the very beginning, and orchestrating the process at all levels, wherever it is impacted, orchestrating the process all the way through sustained business benefits. You don't get to let go at deployment. You don't get to let go because people have checked the box, they went through the training. Change leadership is seeing it all the way through to produce business benefits. Here's another one that stirs the pot. Change leaders create one integrated strategy, one integrated process, one integrated plan from conception, assessment, design, impact, rollout, and ensuring adoption and sustainment. It's one plan. We so frequently hear, oh, you're doing the change thing. Bring us a change management plan. And it sits on the side. It's a bolt-on. And so here we're trying to alter the mindset of leadership to truly understand it's about an integrated plan to get us from day one all the way through sustained business benefits. That's a critical piece in setting up efforts for success to do that. Make sense? All right. I'm just flashing this for you. This is the process that we use, the process that PG&E has adopted, the Change Leaders Roadmap. It starts at day one. Hear the wake-up call. Oh my, I think we need to change something around here. Understanding that and moving all the way through in this methodology. It's a 9-phase methodology, perhaps one of the most comprehensive that handle both the design of the solution, all the human elements, all the way through sustained business benefits. Those of you interested in this, there's a book in the bookstore, one of our 2 books on called The Change Leaders Roadmap. Okay. Joe.
All right, thank you, Linda. Okay, so we're taking care of the slides over on that side. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your help on that one. So let me give you just a quick introduction. How many of you have heard of PG&E? All right.
Good.
Awesome.
Hopefully
Any customers?
positively.
Any customers in the crowd? Fantastic. Wow, cool. So PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric, we're about a $15 billion company from 2013, 23,000 employees. You can see the kind of the size of our organization. Everything we're doing is to become a leading utility through more safe, reliable, and affordable energy services so that our customers trust, like, and want to do business with us. So that's the vision and strategy for the organization. I was first approached about this job about 2.5 years ago, and I'm going to tell a little bit of a story. So the next sets of slides, I want to lay out my journey, my team's journey, and our experience in terms of implementing change leadership within a change management context. So when I went through the interview process and then the first 30 days on the job, I asked these 2 questions. How do you define change management? So I met with, in the interview process, upwards of almost 20 different people, from individual contributors through senior officers in the company. And invariably, I got this answer. Well, change management is communication and training. We need you to build better communication and better training. Okay. About what? What are we communicating and what are we trying to train on? Well, we're one of our key things right now is becoming a more safe utility. Okay, so tell me some more about that. Well, we have a safety culture that we're installing in the company, and we have to operate our systems, our pipes and wires, with the interest of public and employee safety. Okay, that's pretty interesting. Pretty big shift, yeah? What else? Well, we're installing geographic information systems. So for those of you not in the utility business, or if you're not familiar with that, I want you to think of all the pipes and wires on a digital grid, digital map, right? So we're going to digitize the system. Okay, well, how do we do that? How do we manage the system? How do we look at the system now? Well, it's all on paper maps. Okay. And who's affected? Well, the guys in the field. Okay, do they have computers? No, they don't. So what are we going to do? We're going to give them iPads, and they're going to walk around in the field with their iPad, and they're going to figure out where the maps are. Okay. So I began to realize that what they're really looking at is what I would call transformational change. So in my head, I'm listening to this, and I'm thinking, this is transformational because mindset, culture, and behavior are all in play. And based upon my experience, it's my assertion that I'm not going to train someone or communicate them into being a safer individual. We need some additional interventions. Communications and training will be important, but we need a little bit more. So then I said, well, how can I help you? So if this is what your definition is, this is what you're trying to achieve, how do you think I can help you? Well, Joe, we need them to do what we tell them. And we give them new tools, and they snap back. They go back to the old way of doing it. So we hold that tool in place, and for 3 months they do it, and then we turn our back, and they go back to the old way of doing things. So we just have to communicate, so that they'll be different and listen to us. Okay, right? So I'm hearing by the chuckles in the room a level of sympathy, or at least sympathy, perhaps empathy with your experiences. So this is kind of where we stepped in. And what I said in the interview process, I said, look, if you're looking for a world-class communication and training organization, I'm not your guy, with all due respect. Communication and training are important, critical, but in and of themselves, insufficient to achieve the level of change that you're taking on in this organization. By the way, my team right now has 108 initiatives under management. They're all transitional or transformational projects. Huge scale change, right? So I said, so the way I'm going to approach this is I'm going to install an enterprise change system, one way of executing change in the organization, so we have a little more predictability, less variance, more consistency. So let me pivot into that, and I'll show you a little bit of how that landed and is still in place now. So 3 things, right? People can remember 3 things very easily. Yeah? We're going to govern change, deliver change, and energize change. So this is kind of our framework that we've used to lay out our own process, and then we've brought in the CLR from being first to execute this change as well as all of those 108 initiatives. So in the govern change, are we working on the most important projects? Or are we chasing every great idea that somebody throws out there? Do we understand the business benefits? So we're going to spend $10 million for what return? Do we understand, is there a dialogue in the company about that? And what's the level of demand that is being generated, and is leadership truly engaged in that? Because as I would expect you all know, running a business is much different than changing a business. And so I have to have my sponsorship and my leadership has to be more engaged. Secondly, so that's the govern piece, right? We say the ultimate measure of change is the achievement of business benefits. That's what I want the company to measure me on. So then we go to the deliver. So we lay out our agenda, our enterprise change agenda through the governance leg, and then we go and execute. And we have one change model. And we've taken being first CLR and made it our own. We've licensed it across the entire enterprise and made it our own. We trained and we began implementing this process on real projects, those GIS projects. Sometimes we did it in a recovery mode, and sometimes we do it up front. I'll be honest with you, we're still shaking the portfolio out and getting more and more people to buy into the work, because change leadership starts at the beginning. And my team is still in conversations where people are calling us up. Hey, we heard you're an enterprise change capability. We need some help. Okay, great. What's going on? Well, we got a deployment in a month, and I need a communication plan. Okay, hold on a second, right? So lots of stories like that. So we're training and applying on real projects, and we're focused on achieving the business benefits. Okay? Finally, energizing change. So we're going to govern it, get our priorities straight. We're going to deliver really, really well. And we have to energize. So what do I mean by that? We actually have to massage the organization, lubricate the leaders and the people, the culture, the mindset, so that their minds are open to change leadership, a different way of leading change than change management. And so we have a series of activities that we've launched to help lubricate the organization, to get their minds thinking a little differently about how change is executed through the organization. Because if we just did the deliver, which is really focused on the projects, the initiatives themselves, and we didn't address the executives, what would happen? It would be crushed under the weight of a different culture for change. So energize is meant to massage, lubricate that leadership, the rest of the organization, so that they're receptive to a new way of leading change. Make sense? All right. So here's what I want to do. I want to drop into now, within that context, I started 2 years ago in March. So we're just past the 2-year mark. I'm going to take you through year 1, what we did, year 2, A couple bullet points and some stories and some examples of what we've done. As Linda said, at any point in time, if you have a question, stop us, all right? So year one, basically our goal was to define change leadership, recontract with the organization. Go back to that interview. I'm not here to do change management. Do not hire me if you want to communicate and train. It's not what you need. You need to have something inclusive of that, and it needs to be a little bit broader. Educate. Begin to get people to be aware of there's a new process, a new way of doing things, and start implementing. So you can see there's just a quick orange, blue, and yellow suggest the activities that fall into each of those govern, deliver, energize streams. So we started a benefits identification process. We launched a governance function in the organization. One sec. In that, we identified 14 projects in 2014 that committed to $31 million of benefit. Not really a lot, but it's a start. And we laid out a plan, and so now we have people with skin in the game that we can go and realize. Question?
How is your organization structured?
Great question. So the question was, how is my organization structured? So my function works across the entire enterprise. I work on all of the transformation, all the largest initiatives in the company. I report to the CIO, Karen Austin. For really, the key reason there is she's a change agent inside the organization, number one. Number two, she took the action out of a senior officer meeting to come back with a plan on how to do this. And therefore, fortunately or unfortunately for her, it was kind of like flypaper. She got stuck with it, right? And so she gets the benefit of having to be the executive sponsor of this function.
I do want to say, Joe, on behalf of the question, and Joe reporting into the CIO, we've done a lot to make the distinction between executive or enterprise change and IT change. So it's not just ascribed to an IT organization, it's only the IT project. So we've absolutely clearly said that, and Karen is known for having the courage to stand up a new function that's beyond her normal scope.
So one color commentary and then an opinion. Color commentary was Karen, first 30 days. Karen, the number one question I get, why do I report to you? Why do you report to IT, Joe? Are you just working on IT? No, not at all, right? We're working across the entire enterprise. Opinion, it's a demonstration of the level of maturity that the company has around change as a strategic capability. It's just where the company is right now, right? And it's still the number one question I get asked. And there are conversations of where's this going to go? Okay? Thank you for the question. Okay, so next, adopt and implement one method for change. So we went to RFP. We looked at all the different providers out there. We had about 8 submissions, being first being one, and 9 out of 10 in my focus group selected being first, number one. Cross-functional team, every line of business, everyone in the game, everyone participating, orals, all that kind of good stuff. So we've licensed the methodology, and it is now our one PG&E method for change. I'll give you an analogy for that in a little bit. Identify and overtly discuss key change risk factors. So as a part of implementing the CLR, we have basically 1-day and 5-day workshops, where we install and the 1 day is really an energize activity where we're creating a common language. We're helping people spell CLR, right? And we're helping them understand its 9 phases. In the 5-day, we're actually with project teams in a workshop applying the methodology and having them roll up their sleeves and actually create artifacts for their initiatives. In both of those workshops, we run a top 10 change risk voting process. And these workshops are anywhere from 25 to 50 people, every single line of business, Tony Early, our chairman and CEO, all the way through individual contributor. So wide organization, very deep, top to bottom. Top 10 change risks, according to 35 years of field research from being first. Number one issue, 11 out of 12 times, is capacity. We just don't have the capacity to do all the work that you're asking us to do. My day job, as well as the 15 initiatives that I'm working on. So we begin to overtly address that with senior leadership, and we have some sponsorship, and we actually have to do a better job of this, to be honest with you, here in year 2, and we're are beginning to move down that path.
Yeah, thanks. And let me mention this. So the risk is checked off always as number one because of the people who are not enabled to have the capacity to do all of what's being asked of them. The enterprise strategic question is, why are we enabling and colluding with that pattern in the organization? What do we need to do differently at the governance level, at the strategic level, so that we're actually generating capacity for the mission-critical changes required in the organization? So we're in the process of altering the conversation from look at all the upset in the organization for the lack of capacity to why are we enabling it and continuing to enable it? 11 out of 12 programs, and this is still the issue. And so we're raising that conversation to the executive level.
Thanks. Build out some change infrastructure. So I went and hired a team. They're all here today. If you had a chance to get a placard handed to you on the way in, those are folks in my team. If you would, just real quick, can my team just raise their hand? So we got Nadia in the back over there, Ted over here, Jim in the middle, Margot and Rudy and Adam.
And the crowd went crazy.
All right. So they're well versed in this. So if you're love to have conversations over the next 2.5 days to follow up with you, but don't feel like you have to necessarily follow up with Linda or I, although we're happy to do that. Any one of those folks can explain what's going on real time inside of the organization as well. So one of the key processes that we build out was something that we call the Change Health. And you'll see it on your placard. Change Health is an objective assessment that we run on a monthly basis to facilitate a discussion between the sponsor and the change lead, the change consultant, on how well are you executing your change process. It's a series of yes or no questions, and it facilitates a really interesting dialogue. I'll give you 2 examples. Do you have defined roles and responsibilities for your initiative? Yes or no? Yes or no? People get to answer that. Are you role modeling those roles and responsibilities on a monthly basis? Yes or no? It's those kinds of questions that facilitate a really interesting dialogue, because as soon as there's that pause, you ask a question like that and they go, if you have to think about it, you're probably not doing it. Right? Especially because we're talking about the sponsor. So we're engaging that leadership level on that particular topic. All right. Change leadership professional development. So in addition to the 1 and the 5 day that we bring in for the initiatives and the energize piece, right, to execute the change itself, last year my team and I, 11 of us, went through a workshop from Being First called Foresight. Absolutely follow up with us offline if you want to hear some more about that. It is a training that changed my life. I'm holding back emotions right now. It changed how I work with people. It changed how I look at things. My capacity to deal with really, really complex problems on a personal level, to go eyeball to eyeball with a person of authority or a person who is just lost in the transformation. It has completely shifted how I do that. And it's nothing that an MBA is going to teach you. It's not what a PhD is going to teach you. It's much deeper than that in terms of the experience. So we did that last year, 11 of us. 12 folks are going back through this year. And we get into it where it's our way of investing, it's our deepest level of investment in creating a change leadership professional inside the organization. And then last but certainly not least, we created a community of practice for the folks who've been through our workshops. We have 450 people have been through our workshops in the past 1.5 years. So those 12 workshops we talked about touched 450 people over about 15, 16 months. Question?
So if I can paraphrase, if I understand right, your CIO, the burning platform.
So the question is, what was the compelling reason to act to step into this space, right? So in 2012, the company launched a strategic planning process modeled after GE's process. We call it S1, S2. S1 is a 5-year strategic plan. S2 is a 1-year budget, right? So they launched that in 2012, and at the end of that, all the senior officers sat back, and they kind of slunk in their chair after 2.5 days of hearing everything and went, oh my gosh, this is a lot of change. We need to get a lot better at change. How are we going to do that? Well, let's get a change management function. And Karen Austin said, I'll be more than happy to bring back a proposal for that. And then they went and staffed the job, and here we are, 2.5 years later. Thanks for that.
Except it sounds like an oxymoron, because if you talk about capacity, and then you talk about the amount of time that people have gone through the program, the fact that they stood up and said they were willing to allow that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so I welcome your thoughts on this one. It's a state of transition. It's where the company is. It's moving from, we need better change management. Remember that communication training thing? That's what it's all about. But then you sit there and you say, hold on a sec, because we ran a safety workshop. We had 100% of the leaders go through. 100%. They all said it was a 9 or above, but we're not any safer. How's that possible? There's something else there. It's the behavior. It's the mindset. It's the culture of the leadership that has to move. That, my experience, lags some of this work, which is now, interestingly enough, beginning to come to the front of some of our work. We're starting now to really, and I'll talk about this in year 2 in the future, we're actually beginning now to put real concrete culture work in play.
Yeah, I do want to just mention one of the primary things that we bring forward is the concept of addressing the mindset, the underlying assumptions to that kind of an executive response. And so when they say, I don't have time to go through the training, and there is a conversation that occurs as opposed to a salute, right? And the conversation is, at what cost? And then how will you follow up the training so that you know you got the ROI from the time spent? And so we really are having those executive level conversations, and it's more than training, which you'll hear from me, as we conclude. Just because we have 450 people that have gone through the training does not make them all experts, and they don't need any further support. So it's all about then application to really see it. And it is. And so here's the issue of, we have this ongoing conversation at PG&E about schedule is king. There's never enough time. Schedule is king. And we are politically correct ways just hammering on the mindset that is generating that, because that's at the root of the capacity issue and the failure of most of the change efforts. Because it's not about how fast can you get this done. It's can you get the business benefits as quickly as possible. And so we're altering the conversation around it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so a little bit of spotlight. Was there another question?
Yes.
Yeah.
So how did you socialize the change leadership when I'm sure you had existing project management offices and business intelligence groups and all these different groups? How did you socialize change leadership and management with existing power and hierarchies within the company?
Yeah.
Is it Derek?
Yes.
You're a great straight man. Fantastic. This first slide here. So we built a case for change, right? The PMO organization in the company is widely spread. It's decentralized. There's no centralized PMO. What I did was, at the very beginning, I came in and I benchmarked the organization according to best practices by the govern, deliver, energize space, and basically declared that we're at a 1 across the board, that we're ad hoc. We have some really good processes in place, but they're not everywhere. And the ones we have are not consistent, and they're duplicative at times. So the way one line of business does things is different than the way the other line of business does things. And when we have projects that span both of those lines of business, we get language barriers. I'm a former consultant. I worked for years for IBM and Computer Sciences Corporation. And so I like to have fun with them. We have pretty much just about every tier 1 consultant in the company. We have Accenture, IBM, KPMG, Booz, Bain, McKinsey, BCG, Slalom. We have tier 2s. You name it, we have them. And they're great. They do a great job. They're vital to our transformation. And every time they come in and launch a new project, there's another language for change. Every time. And our employees are going, okay, how do we do this? and it's a different definition, so they have to relearn that. So what we've done is, the analogy is we have, the CLR is the iOS. This is how we run change. You have a solution? Great. It's a mobile app. Drop it on the iOS, and it runs. So the value proposition, the conversation I'm having with the KPMGs and the McKinseys now is work with us. We're the middleware for those of us from a technology background. We're the translator of your content into the language of the company. We'll lower the resistance because you plug into one way of doing change for the company, and then we execute. And it's not a silver bullet, but it makes it a little smoother because our people understand, this is transformational change or transitional change. They understand that language. So selling it, we're a startup.
Yeah.
We are a startup in a $15 billion company. And we got round one of funding in the fall of 2013. And we've basically built a $10 million business over the past year and a half, if you were to equate it to a startup perspective. I got the leadership to buy into this one PG&E way of change and not the 12. That was the big thing that landed in the SVPs. So we're going to have one way of talking about it? Yes, because if you have one way, I can measure it. And if I can measure it, I can improve it. And measurement and improvement works really well inside of a utility.
Let me mention very quickly that that's the vision, that's the goal, and we're on the journey. And so we invited all the project management folks and the CI folks and the LSS folks into the trainings. And they're individually doing their comparison. Where do I contribute? Where are there redundancies, et cetera? And then in year 2, you'll see we're launching an integration strategy at the enterprise level to bring everybody together to understand exactly, because they're doing it in their own heads, right? But we haven't coalesced it yet. And we absolutely recognize the need. So we're on that journey, and so far, great receptivity, but we're not there yet.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so case for change, that's the benchmarking piece. In the center, that blue screen there, we have a tool from a company called Shibumi that is our system of record for change health. So it just goes out, everyone kind of update, they hold their conversations, and then they report it up through a management system. I mentioned the team in the top right. And then in the bottom right, govern, deliver, and energize, we built a roadmap of a series of activities we're going to put in place to mature ourselves from level 1 with governance to level 2, level 3, et cetera. So kind of a programmatic view, a process view of how we were going to execute this. Okay, so that's year 1. Let's now move to year 2. So in year 2, year 1 it was change leadership in addition to change management, having that context, that definitional discussion. It was beginning to educate folks, get people on board. It was recruiting an army, to be really candid, getting people to buy into it. And now we're moving from what we call education to demonstration. So we're beginning to see results of our work. So we're also doing everything that we did in year 1. So we're going to run that same play. Year 1 worked really well. We continue to run workshops. We continue to onboard more participants, more initiatives and sponsors and leaders into our approach and our way of thinking. We designed and we have a proof of concept for the business benefits realization process. Adam from my team, who's sitting over here in the center, if you have any questions, you can tackle him at the break. He's the one who's kind of spearheading that. We're enhancing the CLR delivery and support. So we continue to build out additional artifacts. The one artifact I want to share with you now is something we call a change canvas. So the CLR has 9 phases. The first phase is the most important phase. You set the foundation for success for your change at the very beginning. 50%, 60% of the decisions get made in the very beginning. Not the time in the project, but 50 to 60% of those decisions get made for how the project's going to play out in the process. The change canvas basically is a survey. It's an 11 by 17 sheet of paper where you're able to diagram and understand what are your desired outcomes, what are your impacted stakeholders, what are your conditions for success, what's in scope, out of scope, what are your drivers of this change, and most importantly, what are the impacts to mindset, behavior, and culture. You'll see a shot of this on the next slide, and we can follow up offline if there's any interest in learning some more about that. More change leadership, professional development. So we ran the Foresight workshop last year. We're doing that again this year. Another piece that we launched in fourth quarter was an offering from Being First called Walk the Talk. Walk the Talk is a mini cultural intervention where we brought Karen Austin and 25 of her top IT leaders into a room. And I want you to picture this room like a laboratory. And in this lab, what we're incubating and what we're experimenting with are human dynamics. Individuals themselves, and how are they showing up, how are they manufacturing their results, and how are they in relation with each other. So it's a lab. I'm experimenting with my own insides, my own internal thoughts and emotions and mindsets, and also engaging in that with a colleague in the room who I'm a part of a team. We launched that in fourth quarter of last year.
Let me add one
Yeah,
contextual piece to it. Walk the Talk was done to launch perhaps the largest, most complicated IT intervention across the enterprise. So there was a business context for it, and all of the leaders of that effort, that program called Superfit, digitizing everything, or the majority of things that can be digitized early on. And so the context for doing all that work was the launch of Superfit.
And it was because we as an organization we recognized we needed to be different. The IT leadership team said, we actually need to work a little bit differently. So let's go through this process. And at the end of that process, 25 people, vice presidents and senior directors and directors saying, wow, I feel like we are a team. I genuinely feel like we've become a team as a result of this process. And we're now putting in additional conversations where we bring in Walk the Talk content into the room through offsites and things like that. So more to talk about that. I want you to hold Walk the Talk in that same, it affects people in the way that I referred to my personal experience with Foresight. Okay, the other piece is we're beginning to design change capability integration. So 3 key processes in the organization that are up first. So how do we plug into the superstructure of the company? More concretely, from an end-to-end process perspective, number 1, strategy. This team, this enterprise change team, the vision is we're the pivot point from strategy to execution. So number 1 is plugging into the strategy process. Number 2, the governance process. Remember the govern side? Govern, deliver, energize. Plug into that. And number 3, process improvement, Lean Six Sigma. Where are our process colleagues in the organization? And how does DMAIC, DMADV, and SIPOX and all of the Lean Six Sigma tool set integrate with our change process? Question?
Are you also responsible for looking at change saturation? Like, okay, guys, we do one more, that's it, break.
Yeah, so the question is, are we also responsible for change saturation? So we are. We're grabbing that brass ring. You have to understand, we're 11 different lines of business inside the organization. Two core lines, gas and electric. Everyone else is a support organization. So the way the organization works can be a bit siloed and fragmented at times. And that's why we have a one PG&E approach to bring everything together. So what we're in the process now of doing is bringing what we call stakeholder heat maps into play. At an initiative level, what I think is somewhat innovative is actually turning it around and looking at it from an impacted work group level. So not just initiatives and who are they affecting, but just look at one work group. And what's everything that's touching them at what points in time? Nothing really new, but we're beginning to bring that into the area because it specifically addresses the capacity.
You mentioned your alignment and process improvement groups. Where do you fit with your PMO, let's say?
So there is no enterprise PMO. There are multiple project management offices in the organization, basically in each line of business. We're like this with the IT line of business, PMO. We're very close to the electric PMO as well, probably second in terms of our relationship. They have a bit of enterprise project governance. But PMO is a widely used word, right? So I want to be clear. There isn't like one PMO in the sky. It's more of a networked set of PMOs.
So how does your approach integrate with your approach? Do you have to do some work with them?
It doesn't right now. It doesn't.
It's in the strategy for next year.
We are in the process of bringing them in. They're going through their own. They're basically where we were 2 years ago, trying to come up with one way of executing project management in the company, and we're very close with them. That's a change in and of itself, so we're supporting them as a change leads, and we're also supporting them as subject matter experts. Okay. So spotlight on year 2. Here's a quick view of the change canvas. I want you to think of the change canvas as just like an artist paints. You're artists. As change leads, you get to paint what the environment is. Now, you don't get to use any materials. You actually have to represent what you're dealing with. There's some constraint, but it's more of a creative process to understand the environment of the change.
I know that the presentation and the topic is change leadership, that no matter what you do to leaders, it doesn't mean anything if it doesn't filter to the employees. Will you be speaking to that, or can you address a little bit of that?
Yeah, sure. So change leadership is something that the employees need to hold the leadership accountable to. So what that looks like as a frontline employee is if no one's bringing you a change that you have to go do. They're actually coming to you with a question that says, so we think we need to get better over here, and since you're the expert in that job, can you come help us with that? So in one way, it begins to show up as an inclusive discussion, as opposed to, go back to the beginning of our time together, it was, those guys just won't do what I need them to go do. So we're changing that dialogue. In some regards, from what you heard from Dan Pink this morning, we're dealing with the seller, right? Seller beware and buyer beware element, that it can't just be top down. You actually have to bring the impacted users into the conversation early, not at the end.
Have you engaged frontline employees in these trainings?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. We have impacted stakeholders who attend our workshops. Okay. We got about maybe 10? 10. All right. So I'm just going to buzz through a couple of these. So just in summary here, right, from 2013 to 2014, here's a couple of things that we did. I'm going to pick off one or two. We introduced this concept of change leadership. Change management is a set of activities that are focused on a deployment of a particular change. Change leadership is looking at the business benefits. Up front, identify them, and then realize them at the end. One approach for change. The second bullet, top 3 change risk factors. Right? We keep hammering them home. We take those change risk factors and we dial them into the new interventions or capabilities that we're building out, so that we have a kind of a closed loop. If this is our gap, let's take some action to begin to close that gap, so capacity and alignment integration start to reduce in terms of their risk. In terms of 2015, 2016, we're beginning 108 initiatives in the portfolio. We're beginning to focus on the highest, most significant impacting ones. Safety is one. The second one, we're launching a new leadership model for the organization. We have an initiative called Leading Forward. We're very focused on that, where we're taking all of our change leadership content and pushing it into how the company develops its future leaders. So we're making it a part of the woodwork. We're overtly addressing culture, mindset, and behavior. That walk the talk example that I referenced earlier with IT, that is now coming to the senior officers in the organization. We're beginning to engage them in a cultural mindset conversation, so that they can begin to modify how they approach change and step into some of the gaps, like capacity.
Let me just mention one other thing, because it is just, rocking us in a positive way. The senior executives at PG&E are not only going to go through that program, but they've committed a day a month for the next year to their continued development as conscious change leaders, because they really see the need to change the culture and change their mindsets, change their ways of operating around setting up change. Huge, huge.
Huge.
Not a Saturday?
Not a Saturday, a business day. Good question.
They're making their own change leadership, their own development, their own teamwork, in their words, right? They're making that a priority for themselves. Question?
Question is, beyond training, getting kind of a smile sheet off the back of training, measure the outcomes of, maybe you're not there yet, how do you measure the outcomes of, I'll call it change leadership behaviors on your projects or any change initiatives? Have you guys gotten to the point of thinking about how you might do that? Because I think that's the million-dollar question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say we're not there yet.
I'm not either. So
Yeah, you know what? It is what it is, right? We're not there yet. It's showing up one conversation at a time, for sure. And those things are hard to measure. And it sounds like, 30-year veterans in the organization saying, I used to know how to do change until I heard what you had to say, and you're right, I need to go do it that way, right? How do you measure that impact? Quite honestly, what I'm intending to do is the Leading Forward initiative, in terms of how we measure our people, what great leadership looks like at PG&E, and that whole formal process, as that comes in, I'm plugging into that, so that becomes the measurement factor. There's other surveys and things like that, but there's nothing programmatically yet or systematically that we have in play to address your point. But I'd love to maybe talk to you offline and hear about your opportunities there as well.
And the one other thing I'll say, with the institution of Change Health being a sponsor level conversation, that will be easy picking to say the critical questions that continue to show up as green, amber, or red, and how is that being demonstrated by individual leaders. So it'll be a transition.
Yep.
Yeah. All right,
Great.
we need to.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Over to you. I'm not going to
Okay.
spend
Okay.
more time on this.
All right, good.
Thanks.
So a couple of things, I just want to make some comments on this, and then happy to follow up with you for those of you that have questions. So here's the color commentary on, as the consultant coming into the organization and working with an internal leader such as Joe. So here are some things that I just want to point out. Having a close partnership with the person in charge of the function, of standing up the function, absolutely essential. And by close partnership, it's like honesty and candor and confrontation. I mean, the relationship it just exists, and it enables us to push the edge and, do whatever is necessary to carry forward. Really critical. Sustained leadership, engagement and sponsorship, like the executives doing the walk the talk at this point, absolutely a must, because they've got to model what they're asking of the organization. This is not a delegated effort. They've got to model it, so really critical there. The thing about, check the box, I smiley face, I went through the training. Year 2 is all about demonstration. The Change Leaders Network, the coaching of the internal change people. It is beyond training, even though we continue to do the training. We're not a training organization. We're a capability building organization. It's got to be demonstrated in actual projects. So the theme of this year going forward is demonstration on projects and putting in the support mechanisms for that. Really critical. So here's a whole nother level of thinking for the organization, enterprise level strategy. So all of the independent functions of PM and CI and LSS, et cetera, they all went off to do their own thing. And Chris Johns, the CEO, is saying, absolutely, I want an integrated strategy. I'm happy they're all doing it. Well, do you have an integrated strategy of all the integrated strategies that are taking place? And so it's the same thing with safety culture. I mean, there are, 20 different safety initiatives, but no integrated strategy. And Joe's team is just starting it up to an integrated at the enterprise level, really critical. So as a couple of examples. Mindset and culture, absolutely essential. How do you put that more than a conversation, more than a paradigm video, to really get the leaders at all levels to really see how their heads, how their assumptions, how their beliefs are setting up the organization for continued risk or over mitigating those risks. Why is capacity still an issue when we knew about it a year ago? We have to address what's going on there. So culture and mindset, which is taking off this year. And lastly, I personally want to say with you, my critical edge is being patient with where PG&E is. And, Joe and I, and even at times with Joe, I can see what's necessary. I can see where it needs to go. And I can only go as far as the organization. So for me, understanding readiness, understanding their level of awareness, how I can push it, stretch it, the capacity issue, the core for me is success is dependent upon our patience to pace the organization through this journey. We can't do it to them. They've got to do it for themselves. So critical piece there.
And that's part of the value I look for from being first is see what I don't see, because I'm in it every day. I'm walking the halls. I'm dealing with the politics, all the corporate processes, all the operational focus. I'm in it, and I try and see what I can't see, but I realize that there's only so much of that I can do. So I want a tether to the outside world to be looking out for us, not just my function, but the company as a whole in terms of what are we not doing? What are we missing?
Yeah. So not only do we have a lot of strategy conversations, but we have a coaching relationship to get down and dirty with each other on, what is it, how are these patterns showing up and need to shift. So last thing I want to share with you, and this will be something we're going to ask you to, if you're interested, to download, but implications for you about what we've just shared. So how would you make the case in your organization, if it doesn't already exist, for enterprise change leadership capability at all ranks? How would you go about making that case? Do the leaders acknowledge their personal role in setting the organization up for success, as opposed to the bless and delegate or the hit and run sponsor, right? And so how do we alter that perception? Do they acknowledge their role, and are they capable of it? How is change capability positioned in the organization relative to all the other functions that are going on? Is it one more little slice of the pie, which is where PG&E was thinking about it? No, change leadership is the pie. It's not a slice of the pie, it's the pie. How do we put all of this stuff together on behalf of producing business benefits? And last of these questions for you is, are you engaged from launch? And how could you be positioned? How could you rebrand yourself from a change leadership perspective to be seen as a value add capability, to be engaged right from the beginning on behalf of creating an integrated strategy, an integrated plan for the projects that you're working on? So, questions for you to consider.
Marianne?
Thank you
Thanks
so
a lot.
much. Thanks,
Good job.
Joe. Good job.